The following is a presentation of the Force Center podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the Force Center podcast feed, and this particular episode is the Andor Report.
Boom, boom, boom.
That was extremely clear. That was dramatic drums, and then the powerful, not meteors, the crystals shattering through the atmosphere that creates the eye. Right? Is that the noise that I just heard?
That absolutely is. You nailed it so well. I'm getting choked up on the sandwich I had before recording. Yes, absolutely. One of my favorite parts of this episode, the wow across the sky.
It was really, really powerful visually and just sound-wise. So thank you for recreating that power. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw, and the person making the beautiful noises is Ken Napzok. We are very happy to be here to dive into the 6th episode of Andor. It is entitled The Eye, written by Dan Gilroy, directed by Susanna White. This is the 6th chapter of the show, but kind of the 3rd chapter of this arc, which appears to be the way we're doing this, is 3 episode arcs. And this was certainly a big old climax in lots of ways. A climax that's still a climax with an ellipsis. Still a lot more story to be told. This was about 45 minutes of new story once you strip away all the credits and stuff. We always like to share our experience of watching the show. Ken, did you do your normal and stay up until midnight, and any special rituals or events?
No, I did. It was another busy day, aren't they all? And I finally slowed down, and I did something I hadn't done before. About 11:15, I put on the previous week's episode of Andor. Ooh. And kind of watched it straight up to about 11:59, refreshed the drink, and then started the new episode. And that worked out just nicely. And which is an interesting comment on, I think this show is going to be really rewarding when you sit down and binge it all, which is a bigger discussion. But I think it was effective.
Yeah, no, that's really great. I was kind of running late in life, actually still trying to get things done at about 11:45, and so is my wife. And I just really had that moment of like, I need to get ready for Andor, like emotionally. Yes. So my wife is still doing things, and I normally kind of just take a picture of my whiskey and my Andor action figure, and I didn't even do that. I set up my Andor action figure that watches the show with me, and I just stared at Andor for a little while. I looked into his little plastic eyes, and it kind of like slowed down and got in the rhythm, and thought about the things that I was excited to see in this episode, and the things that were possible, and the horrible things that I were afraid that might happen, which then did. Horrible but beautiful and moving. So that was really great. And then, like I said, my wife, she would love to stay up and watch at midnight, but she has to go to work early in the morning. And normally she's like, I got to get everything done, and she'll just be sleeping by midnight. But like I said, she was still having to get things done, which was totally fine, great. But I kind of forgot that she was still moving around and doing things in a relatively small apartment. And at like one high stake moment in the show, like a door opened and I yelped and jumped a little from the couch because the tension was so high. Like, no, that's just my wife doing her Duolingo, probably. I'm not going to die. Everything is okay. So that was a fun experience to truly feel the tension of Andor right in my own home.
360 degrees, 360 degrees, 3D, 4D tension.
Exactly. Yeah. 4D tension in the 4th dimension of tension. Let's get into the actual episode then. What was your overall reaction? Did you love it? Did you like it? Did you struggle with it? How much of it was what you expected versus being surprised? Tell me about your thoughts.
It's funny. It was almost beat for beat what I expected. And I'm not saying that like I knew it was coming. I just was like, yeah, this is the heist part of the spy thriller series that we were told we were going to get, even though I think that's changed from the initial days of when we heard that. And so Stephen Schiff and everyone was more involved. But this kind of was like, yeah, this is as advertised. And you mentioned tension, 4 dimensions of tension, I should say. That's tension just all through this episode. And I loved, especially on a rewatch, just checking the little markers that they put down to just explode that tension up, just crank it up. Oh, they're hiding in a little cave, and here comes some Imperial soldiers. Oh, does that guy recognize they're not part of the team? Does the Commandant recognize? And just they played on that so well. Plus, building up the last couple episodes, I thought it was really effective and really fun, and it did what it wanted to do and set out to do, and it worked all well for me.
No, it was really great. The massive tension of how long is this Imperial going to casually chat while urinating? It is truly raised the tension. No, I felt the same way. I really wanted it to be emotionally and physically explosive, because to me that is the value of the tension. And I thought this episode was what I really hoped for, which was a payoff of the emotional tension and a payoff of the emotional investment. Everything from the lost lives of the various characters that are more meaningful because we spent more time with them, to the payoff that I wasn't expecting of the audience believing Skeen's lies. Like, that was such a great way to make you emotionally invested in the show, right? It's one thing to say, like, okay, we've met these rebels. They're not famous. They don't go on to fight in the Battle of Endor, so their lives are up to be lost, and we care about them. Great. But like this great sort of trick of, like, you and I and on our podcast and many other fans discussed Skeen's backstory and what it means, this brother, in that episode last week that was so focused on why are you in the rebellion, and to spend a week believing a lie is this great payoff of emotional investment, because, like, I walked around feeling bad for an imaginary person's imaginary brother's tragedy for a week, and then the bleeper just gut punched me, so that emotional payoff is the kind of thing that I'm hoping for to reward us for spending time on a lot of great and amazing scenes that are about building character, but not yet characters making choices. And I really enjoyed the payoff of lots of characters making choices and consequences of choices in this episode.
Yeah. I want to discuss that a little bit even before we get into the themes. Yeah, I'm with you too. And when I say this episode did exactly what maybe I thought, that's not something I thought that was going to happen. I'm with you too. Even the viewing right before this episode, at my 11:15 viewing, I love that Skeen confession or half apology, right? It's a great moment, and I'm all in on it. I'm all in on it to the point, Joseph, that there's a part of me that, like a 5% part of my brain, that when he says, I have no brother, to Andor, I'm thinking, well, his brother died. The story's true. He just said, I have no brother anymore. That's how much I want to believe Skeen still.
Yeah, no, I want to, but I don't.
I
at
don't.
all. It really does. I did pop back to watch a couple of other beats from previous episodes, and his theory from last week about, why would somebody bring a treasure to a robbery? It's so great to re-see that as not what Nemik is feeling, which is the desire to believe that Cassian is a true believer, but instead Skeen is like, are you as selfish and self-centered and truly mercenary as me? You better not be. It's great to see that recontextualized and make sense. So great payoff. I think the other thing that has been consistent throughout Andor, which I thought was really present in this episode, and it feels like a lot of people are responding to, is taking these ideas that have been in Star Wars for a long time of, why do we fight? Is it worth the risk of the fight? What is going to be lost when we fight? And really diving deep and making people feel it, right? There's countless Star Wars stories in every medium about people being trapped in the machinery of the Empire, and about risking their lives. But it's the time spent in, even like the sound effects of the blaster fire, to my ear, is literally lower pitch than most Star Wars. Literally a little more gritty sound effect than fun laser gun, and literally more percussive, like just actually shakes your speakers a little bit more. So I feel like what continues to be really fascinating about Andor is really diving deep into existing in essential Star Wars ideas, but presenting them in this way that is really trying to make you rattle your soul, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the cost of the Battle of Endor, we feel it when the Ewok dies. It's incredibly sad. It's an incredibly sad thing to show kids, but we kind of note it to know that that's a part of it, and then we move on, so we're not too weighted down. And all of Andor is like, what if we had 5 episodes about that Ewok dying?
the death of Nanta Chronicles Part 5.
Yes.
I really like what you're saying, and I think it's worth stopping off here on the highway and discussing it. It's this show. I keep trying to analyze with even friends of mine off air via text or in-person conversations about why some people are reacting to this show. And it's generally very positive. I've had a couple people saying, hey, it's not for me in my life. And I actually really like their reasons why. I actually get it. And we can talk about that maybe when the series all wraps up. But it's so familiar and comforting territory in terms of the big themes. We have seen this all before, and we will see it again in Star Wars. But the package, the way it's presented, is definitely different. It's definitely played a little different. And I think that's helping to maybe strike chords in people that normally wouldn't hear those chords. And it's effective. Even, the show's played so real that even some of the big deaths are quick, real, and unceremonious, right? Like no final stand for Gorn or Terramin. No, like, I'll cover you and take the bullets like I'm Boromir or something. They're dead because that's kind of what happens. And that's played so real that highlights the loss and the themes that are going on here.
Yeah, the violence and the chaos. And, I think it's everywhere in Star Wars, this thing that we were feeling so much throughout the episode of the contrast between the, rigid mechanism of the Empire and how much people are trapped in it. I feel like that's the whole motivating idea of Solo, right? But it's there in so many animated shows in Rebels and Clone Wars, where you can see kind of episode after episode where the Empire is defiling a natural, organic culture, right? And that's just everything that's going on in this episode. But again, we really slow down and we really get to feel it with the insults and the disgust at the Donnie people's culture. So again, it's like, I think for me, when I'm watching this, a part of me is like, man, if people are responding to these ideas, I mean, like, I just encourage people to find them the other places that they're there in Star Wars. Like, if you're enjoying the real political realism, go watch some of the Padme political episodes of Clone Wars, because that's what's going on there, right? If you're enjoying the really gritty, brutal, what is the true cost of war? Is it right that the rebels have to take risks and take lives? Read Rebel Rising, Black Spire Outpost, Lords of the Sith, all of Alphabet Squadron. A lot of these ideas are present in those novels, in this mood too, because novels can be more expansive.
Yeah, right there with you. There could be an accompanying list, like a sub chart here on our Google sheet. Is that a thing? A sub chart on Google Sheets? I don't know. I don't work them well. I don't know, but you know what I mean. Where a nice flow chart of just where to connect with this elsewhere, and it's often found in places that you wouldn't think, including Ewoks fighting the Empire and the death of Nanta and the sacrifice of the Ewoks.
Yeah. I agree. And it's really fun to see these ideas developed in such a visceral way. My final overall thought that I wanted to be sure to share is that I feel the subtitle of the entire Andor show should be Bad Husbands and Boyfriends. It's really getting to be a theme. Understand it's debatable who makes a bad partner, but arguably Tim gives into his fear, his jealousy. He rats out Cassian and brings horrific pain to Ferrix, and himself dies. Mothma's husband, Perrin, obviously many of us feel is not winning any awards for Spouse of the Year. And then we have this great episode where we're talking more about, but the Commandant, J-Hold Bihaz, in order to make everything that happens with him more visceral, we get to see who he is, which is a lousy husband and father. Horrible.
And his wife, I did not write the character list down yet.
Rabota, I believe.
Rabota, thank you. I love what he's like. We all have to be on our best behavior. She's like, I'd love to see that. That poor woman. Yeah. She had some of the best comedy moments, and they came from great pain.
Yep, almost all the comedy moments are like, that did make me laugh, but laughing through the tears kind of
Yeah.
moments. All right, let's get into the big themes, because once we're done discussing the big themes, we can talk about Dr. Quadpaw. The great burst of bizarre Star Wars fantasy in this very grounded episode of Andor. Did you have Dr. Quadpaw thoughts that you need to share before we move on?
We'll get there. He's great. I love him. And I forgot about him in the trailer, and he popped up. Exactly what you're describing. This show is played so real, even though it's Star Wars, and even though we've seen some crazy creatures already. I literally went like, wait, what is that? Oh, wait, yeah, we are in Star Wars.
Yep. Yeah, so I'm in love with Dr. Quadpaw. We'll talk more about that later. But for now, we're going to dive into the big themes, the ideas at stake in this episode of Andor, but also I would say probably this arc, and continuing to look at how the overall ideas and themes of Andor are being developed. So, Ken, where did you go first?
So if last week was, why, the big why of rebelling and why you're in the rebellion and everyone has their own rebellion, that kind of theme, all right, this is a continuation of it. And now I think about it, a lot of it is based on skiing. Or you can have a reason why, but it is truly about your conviction and your commitment. And I went to that, especially the stuff in the beginning with Nemik, who I believe now we know his name is Karis Nemik, I think. And we got Arvel Skeen. Great Star Wars.
Skeen, yeah.
This great conversation. I watched it a few times. Just the opening scene where he talks about his faith and why that is not carrying him through, and just the conversations about that, and saying to Andor, you have nothing, you slept like a stone. And all that leads to what I think will eventually be the revelation of, what a rebellion's built on. Oh, they're built on hope. And I think Nemik's got some thoughts on that in that little book there, because he does say to Andor in the beginning there, so you think it's hopeless, do you? And it's really, truly all about conviction and commitment to the cause, but also why you're there. So you can be there, but you still got to commit once you're there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely the area of the theme that I was really interested in. I think the episode is really well constructed to start you off clearly with that conversation between Nemik and Cassian, and to continue this idea of why is Cassian in this, and what is the best way to approach something like this. And for me, that was kind of tied into this whole big theme throughout the episode of, is the rebellion worth the cost? And I thought there was a lot of examination of the personal cost to like you and your immediate life and your loved one's immediate life. But then in that conversation, Nemik also kind of centers the overall moral cost of death. Like, in order for us to rebel against the Empire, people are going to die, and we are going to have to make choices that we don't want to, which is, of course, looms large in Cassian's story. But I think it's really great that it's being, developed right here in the early parts of his journey of the big picture moral cost. But I'd love to dive into what you were talking about of kind of Cassian's choice, the personal cost of rebellion, because I think, what's been developed is that Cassian is torn between these notions of self-survival, keep your head down and take care of yourself and your own, and commitment to the cause. And you can see these sparks where he understands exactly what the Empire is. He understands it very well. He knows that everyone in the galaxy, or not everyone, but some rich people are okay, but most people in the galaxy are suffering. He does care about more than himself. He's not just selfish, right? He cares about Marva and B2 Emo and the community on Ferrix. And, he's looking, that we started with him looking for his sister, taking a great risk because he's looking for his sister. So he's not a total just, I'm out for number one. But Skeen is, right?
Correct.
So this episode to me, is a little bit of, not quite angel and devil, because it's a little bit more complicated than that, but Cassian's got a Nemik and a Skeen on either shoulder, right?
Yes.
And we see both of their perspectives, and they, I think, are putting great tension on what Cassian's ultimate choice needs to be. And I think he makes an explicit choice in this episode, because I think he starts at this point where Nemec confronts him about that need for commitment to the cause, right? You quoted the great line of Nemec being so motivated by philosophy that, I thought my philosophy, my belief would give me comfort, and it isn't. And you have nothing. You sleep like a stone. And he's writing a mercenary essay because he's wrestling with how could someone like Cassian do this? Is it even morally okay for the rebels to use mercenaries? Is it okay to be selfish when we're fighting for this great cause? And I think that absolutely does rattle Cassian. And he's already been rattled by Luthen saying, be a part of something bigger, right?
Yeah.
And then I think Cassian goes through all of this. He is moved by Nemec saving him, Nemec's contributions, the loss of Nemec, but then has every doubt he's had about the rebellion confirmed by Skeen being a selfish, lying mercenary.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm a rebel. It's just me against everyone else. I feel like that line that Skeen says to Cassian is a confirmation of every fear that Cassian has about getting involved in something bigger, because how many people are just going to be out for themselves? And sorry, I have one more thing to say about this, and then I want to pitch it back to you. What I think is really great about this is it's the contrast between Skeen's selfishness and Nemec's philosophy of how are we going to lift everyone up and save the entire galaxy, even down to the image of him using his freedom device, his device that is not locked into Imperial control to get them to freedom to escape. Nemec is so representing a more pure ideology of this is what we're fighting for and why, and we should all go along. And then Skeen's selfishness. I feel like it's not that Cassian is choosing selfishness in that moment. It's that he is choosing survival.
Yeah.
Because I think, Skeen says to him, you're not here to save anybody but yourself. And I think that connects back to, Luthen's pitch to Cassian of like, the way you're going, you're gonna die. The Empire's gonna hang you. Do you want it to be for something petty, or do you want it to be for something real? And this is what Cassian continues to wrestle with: is should I get involved in something bigger, or should I just do whatever it takes to survive? And I feel like the shooting of Skeen is absolutely just survival. It is Cassian realizing like, hey, Skeen, you're proposing that we do this thing together because you need me. And I know the second I go urinate, you're going to shoot me in the back of the head. If I don't kill you right now, you are going to kill me. It might take a week, but you're going to kill me. So it's such a choice of survival. So I just kind of fascinated about that. Cassian's been loaded up with ideas of what is virtuous about a larger rebellion. He's literally got a manifesto that's been written toward him with a chapter about him to sit in his soul. But at the end of this arc, he's driven back closer to where he was at the beginning. I just need to survive, and I just need to look out for me and my own.
Yes. No, this is all great stuff. I'm so glad you went. You jumped to the end to this thing. It's really all part of the conversation. We'll get to the beat by beat stuff. This is why I love just kind of diving in. You're absolutely right. That ending, I kept thinking about it, especially going. You talked about last week. Like you watch the episode and you kind of have trouble going to sleep because we're on the West Coast. We get to watch it a little earlier. And you're kind of in bed rolling around. Not just what am I going to talk about in the podcast, but what did that episode do to me? And I loved one of my favorite things about this episode is exactly what you're talking about there at the end. Some great lines from Skeen about me against everybody else. It's me against everybody else. You're not here to save anybody but yourself. I saw it in you when I saw, and then it's like, Skeen's suspicious nature clearly reflects on him and his commitment and reasons. Now that we go back and see that, there's some lessons in that. You see maybe yourself, you're the worst of yourself out there and others, and that's why you attack them, that kind of thing. But the killing of Skeen, you're right. I think survival. I think he and Han and Tobias Beck would have some great conversations about that kind of stuff later on. But I also put down this note. I was like, oh God, a lot of ways it represents to me Andor killing part of himself, except for he's not quite there yet at the end, which I love. There wasn't this heroic, it's not like Tivik, right? We got this thing with Andor shoots a lot of people and it weighs on his soul. We know this. This is another one. But what's going to weigh is what is it? Maybe Andor's wondering what did it really mean to me? It's survival. He's going to kill me. He says, confesses as much to Vel. Just, when Vel's kind of like that, I don't believe any of this, and he's like, you need to ask yourself about that, or whatever the exact line was. I didn't write it down. But that Andor maybe flies away going, is there part of me that he disgusted me because that's me type of thing? And just kind of see when you see yourself reflected, and does it move him on? And will the words of Nemec, will he read the final sentence of that manifesto is, hey, rebellions are built on hope. I'm half joking with that, but I imagine that phrase is going to be in that manifesto. I love that it's not quite there yet for Andor. We didn't have the big hero moment. We didn't have I am part of the rebellion. He's still trying to survive. He's still trying to figure it out. But there's this question asked indirectly from the leader of the Pilgrims, the Donnies there, the Aldani, when he says, what's the good in you, is kind of the question. I think that's one of the big things going on in this episode too. What is the good in you? And you got to ask yourself that. And I think Andor is trying to figure that out, because you're right. He is connected to all those people. I think part of it too, you're 40 million credits, but what can you do? Maybe you can't go back to Ferrix. You can't help those you love. Maybe you could. I don't know. Is it go away money? And is that what I really want? What do I really want? And I think Andor's still wrestling with it.
Yeah. And I think that it's just this really fascinating division where Skeens and Cassian are aligned on, we will do what we have to survive. Cassian shot Skeen to survive. He shot that Primor guard to survive, because there was no way out of that, he saw, without him, dying. So Cassian and Skeen are aligned on, we do what we take to survive. But Skeen takes that a step forward and is like, and therefore any sort of connection is a lie. Everyone is out for themselves. And Cassian's like, no. I love my family. I love my sister. I have no need to steal all that money from Vel and from Luthen. Like, I'm not just out for myself. So it creates to me this image where Cassian wants to be where Nemec wants to be anything for the larger cause. I am in this for everybody as well as for myself. But he's afraid, because if he makes that choice, he won't survive.
Fear last week they talked a lot about fear, and it's now it's a bigger kind of fear.
And I love that he like, even in that moment where he kills Skeen and holds Vel and Dr. Quadpaw under a blaster, he's still trying to make fair deals. He's paying Dr. Quadpaw twice what his ship is worth that he's going to take. He's not giving him a ton of choice, but he's trying to be decent, because he is a decent person, right? And he's not. He's just taking what he was offered, right? He isn't Skeen, and I think you're right. I think there's almost some anger in, like, we have this overlap of we come from a rough life, a rough childhood, and we have to fight to survive, but that does not mean we're the same.
Because it's all true. What Skeen is saying is true, and you probably, that's how you learn to survive. And now, even going to stuff Luthen was saying to Cassian about, it's not just about being better. It's just about connecting to something bigger, which we get with Nemec, like you said, the Nemec on your shoulder. We all should have a Nemec on our shoulder. But that question of what is the good in you, and we're here with this very nature-driven, organic experience that's going on with these pilgrims up there, which I thought was done beautifully, both in the look and just the looks in their eyes, the reactions. So I loved everything about that sequence, and I think it had a lot to do with what's the dance in your heart, the connection going on in your heart. And I think very much, you're right, Andor, it's not like I'm taking 40 million, I'm out of here, I've killed Skeen. Just give me what I was promised, because that's all I really want. And I'm just curious. What I love about it, Joseph, is it sets up still more questions with Andor, and still 6 episodes of him having to discover truly who he is and who he wants to be.
Yeah. And I think if it is that Cassian is motivated to keep himself alive and keep those closest to him alive, if his, defining trauma is being separated from his sister, whatever happened to his birth parents on Kenari, to the fear of losing his adoptive father Clem, the fear of losing Marva. If he goes back to Ferrex, and this kind of drive to protect those closest to him means you have no choice but to kind of take it bigger and go a little bit more full Nemec's manifesto and take on the Empire, because that's the only way for you to protect the people you love, which is clearly important to him.
Absolutely. And I always say, like, even in real life, it's so much easier to be moved by individuals than groups, unfortunately, right? Sometimes that's the way it just works for folks. And if that's how it works for Andor, even if he does got to try to go back, Han, look at Han, right? Han motivated, whether it be Kira, maybe a little bit later on for Leia, that's the entryway for a lot of folks. And I'm curious to see what happens to Andor when he goes back, if he goes back, whatever goes on Ferrex.
I mean, I that's something that I would guess, and then something that I feel like the trailers might hint toward. So we'll see. I could be wrong. The trailers could be tricksy, but I think it's interesting that obviously we're focused on Cassian. It's the show is called Andor. But we see some moments where other characters wrestle with, is the personal cost of the rebellion worth it, right? I really love the moment where Vel is kind of afraid after to make the choice to just say go, right? And I think it's really staring at Cinta, right? She's really worried about this person that she loves. She knows that she can't control all of this. She knows that there's going to be death and risk. And even after being so committed to plan all this, to do this, at the moment where she has to say go, where it's on her to make it real, she hesitates. It's so real, because it's, I think that's one of those moments that makes us really go like, oh, yep, the rebels aren't just like good guys who always do the right thing because that they chose that alignment at the beginning of the video game, right? This is real. And even when you've gone, it's that kind of thing that we all do that's emotional, but from the outside, when we're getting advice from other people, if Vel described to somebody, like, so I planned for weeks. I took all these risks. There really wasn't a way to back out. I was already on the bridge, but I considered backing out. And from a logical perspective, you'd be like, why? Well, because this is the emotional truth, and we're more emotional than we are logical.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. It's one of the things that is not just unique to Andor, to be clear. It's so present in other parts of Star Wars right now, the modern era of Star Wars, of what you just said, choosing the alignment at the beginning of the video game is an awesome way to describe it. It's just not that simple. I don't think it ever was supposed to be that simple. We just picked up the story in episodes 4, 5, and 6 in Lucas's saga, and the sides seem to have been formed. And it works so well. So that moment is one of those little tension markers where you're just like, you kind of are holding your own breath, like, say it, go, 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 go. And it works just in a fun surface level of tension. But everything you're describing of the cost being up front. And now, we know that these two characters are in a relationship. And so your love, your connection as a person is literally right in front of you. And that's what's at stake. Yeah, it works so well on all levels. And is part of the bigger tapestry of the rebellion.
Yeah, I really love that moment. And then I also liked, I've enjoyed Gorn all these episodes, but he's really been growing on me. We've learned more about his story and going back and watching some early stuff, and now knowing his level of disgust at the Empire's treatment of the Donnie people. I loved everything about his interactions with Commandant J-Hold Bihaz, but in terms of this idea of the personal cost, what are you willing to give for the rebellion, right? Once Commandant J-Hold discovers that Gorn's involved, he says he'll hang for this. And Gorn says, 7 years serving you, I deserve worse than that.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really fascinating, because Cassian is still concerned about losing his life. He's still concerned about the people closest to him, the personal cost of rebellion. Vel is so frightened of losing Cinta that she illogically waits to say, go. And Gorn's just like, I don't care if I die, because I have to pay penance for what I helped you do.
Yeah.
And it's very small, but it's a part of what's making this show really interesting, to see these different levels of engagement with ideas of rebellion and ideas of sacrifice based on your own personal experiences.
Yeah, I really, Gorn, we hardly knew you, but yet we got to spend some time with you there. Where is he? Is he dead or not?
This would be my critique I have of the episode. I really liked. It's a weird thing to say. I really liked Terramon's death because, like you were describing, it felt perfunctory. There was nothing dramatic about it. It was just, hey, sometimes somebody runs through a field of blaster fire and they make it, and sometimes they don't. And he didn't.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very clear for how important Gorn was. I just felt like, if he is dead, or even if he's wounded, a shot of his face would have been great, because as I was watching it the first time, I was like, I'm pretty sure that figure, based on the blocking of the scene, was Gorn.
Yeah.
But we really don't get any confirmation visually or verbally. And I would have liked, I didn't need a shot that like lingered and made it romantic, right? Because I like what you're saying about making the violence brutal and real, which it was. But I would have liked a shot confirming either his death or his grievous injury.
I asked because it's so funny. On my second viewing this morning, I was like, I had a note for myself to like check if Gorn was alive or dead. And then I got so wrapped up in the episode, I skipped by that. I just didn't stop for a moment. I think maybe I assumed he did, but even as you and I discussed it, I'm like, was so important in that operation, is I could see him going on in some way, and because maybe I want to. It was a really good use of that character to be on the inside and to hear that speech, that coffee sipping moment that we saw in the trailer for so long, to actually see it in full context was even better than I can imagine. Meaning it was impactful because it was so just damning of the Empire's view of cultures and worlds and the people they're oppressing. So I loved it. So anyways, I think I'm just rooting for him to be alive.
I think so too. I think the fact that we didn't get a shot, or we didn't get somebody, when the rest of them got on the ship, nobody was asking where Gorn was. I'm glad that we didn't get it. Like, no, I saw it went straight through his heart. He's gone. Because I am hoping that Gorn continues. I'm hoping that we see, does this action help the Donnie in any way, or does it make things even worse for them? Is the boot of the Empire going to come down even more cruelly and faster? This episode, we spent a lot of time talking about how they were handling them, which I definitely want to talk about. But I want to continue the Donnie story and with it Gorn.
It's big. Yeah, no, I know what you mean there. Yeah, absolutely. Can we get a spin-off series?
Yeah, exactly. And then this idea of the personal cost of rebellion we talked about a lot, but I also feel like the idea of the moral cost and how should we fight this fight was really raised. Nemik is really, wrestling with the choice of like, well, mercenaries are just brutal and they don't have feelings, and we are doing this for specific reasons, and kind of bringing up that idea of like, well, does the rebellion need to be as brutal, as amoral as the Empire to defeat them? And that great exchange of like, well, maybe if we're really violent with them, they will say, okay, let's talk about this. Cassian going, no. So it really raised that specter. And then we really saw again and again the rebels' attempt to use violence when needed, but not to be as brutal and casually violent as the Empire, right? Of Vel saying, if we get what we came for, everyone walks away, right? We're not the same as you. So to have that kind of the moral cost of the larger cost of the rebellion framed that way, and then see the way the violence was just sort of out of control. It wasn't, as you were saying, all moral choices. It wasn't like Cassian going, I don't want to shoot that person, but I have to, right? It was that as soon as violence starts, it spins out of control. I absolutely loved J-Hold's heart attack, right? Like, that was a violence that the rebels caused that they didn't choose. Nemik being crushed was a violence that was not like, he got caught by the Empire. So this idea that once you start violence, it's chaos and you can't control it.
I love that you brought this up, man. God, I love working with you. How to build this rebellion is a thing I wrote down too, because you have it from the mercenary stuff, which I thought was, I want to read Nemik's I want to read all the manifesto. Maybe could they just sell that at a Galaxy's Edge? But the thought of, well, I have a different view of mercenaries after meeting you, Andor. Like, if this is what you are, we're going to need you, and it takes all kinds. You and I believe it even takes porgs screaming to win this war, and how you got Terramin to reveal that, well, he was a stormtrooper, and you should have been here when Cinta found that out. because they killed her family, but we need him here. And the cause needs all these pieces. The rebellion needs all these pieces. And the question of how you fight. Yeah, great note with Vel saying, because that's what you would do. You would pull the trigger. We're not you. It's all that big question of how you fight. And it's interesting because I think this episode poses more questions than gives answers because we also know what's coming. We know Saw's out there. We know the bigger fight's coming. We got stuff happening to the Gorman, the people of Gorman with Mon Mothma. And like you said, once it starts, even the Empire's not looking until they are. And then you might be careful what you wish for type of thing. Even last week, Luthen's, Kayla says, well, all be over, Clea says, we'll all be over tomorrow, or it's just beginning. And I love all that to say. I don't love that Nemec's dead, but I liked the choice that it wasn't from a blaster of a trooper. It was the goal of the mission killed him.
Yep.
And that speaks to the cost, the moral choices there, and how you fight, how it matters, and how, in the end, you're going to be forced to make some choices you didn't plan for, because that's what happens when this all begins.
Yeah, it was just so chaotic, right? Even the fact that, we can take a tiny amount of the money we plan to steal, and we have to make them. We don't have any repulsor lifts.
Yeah,
we don't have any Wookiees. We just have to yell at we have to yell at this not healthy commandant until he has a heart attack. It's just so fascinatingly chaotic and real. And by the way, people are responding to this. This is a heist is so real compared to some of the other styles of heist that we've seen in Star Wars sometimes.
Yeah, no, and when the commandant started getting the sweats and the arm grab, I was like, oh, I've been there. I worry about this all the time. Oh God, this is not good for him. And it shouldn't be, but yeah.
No, not great for him. And I feel like my last kind of thought on this idea of, is the rebellion worth the cost? We're gonna see the rest of Luthen's reaction when he knows what the cost of it was.
Yes,
and I'm curious to see how much he cares.
Yeah.
But if the whole episode started with kind of raising the question of how far should the rebellion go, what is the moral cost, what is the personal cost, Luthen's response at the end of laughing with joy and then exhaling and sighing a little bit is for him, the answer is yes.
Yeah. I love that ending.
It has to be done.
Yeah. It has to be done, and you can find the joy in the horror, I guess. But yeah, I love that ending. I thought the show keeps challenging me. I'll say this: Andor keeps challenging me at the end of every episode, where I'm like, really? That's why we're doing this? But at the same time, it comes from a spot of just please give me the next episode now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the endings for me are sometimes they're oh man, I want to know what happens next, or in the episodes that are building up, ooh, the characters are poised to make a choice, but now I'm so curious what their choice is. And then for me, does the ending feel like it is addressing a thematic question that was raised in this specific episode? So this episode feels like a complete thing, and this was really satisfying to me because it felt like one of the questions is is the rebellion worth the cost? And Luthen's got a big old laughing yes.
Yeah, it's a great freeze frame, by the way.
If they freeze frame it, it would have been a great sitcom ending, right?
Yeah. Rodney Dangerfield singing there. Let's all have some fun.
Yeah. And I love everything you're saying about all of these ideas of, you got to fight the fight, but how do you fight it? Because that is such a crucial Star Wars idea, right? That's at the heart of Luke's woes in The Last Jedi. That's a lot what's going on in the Obi-Wan Kenobi show, right? Of need to get it back out there. We need to press back against the Empire, but at what cost? And how do we do it? And when do we, use the blade? And when do we throw it aside? Those ideas are so essential to Star Wars that yes, tyranny must be opposed, but how are we going to do it and keep our souls?
Yeah, there's the line from the leader of the Pilgrims: "Peace to those who come in peace." When saying you come in the temple, it doesn't necessarily mean you're putting your blasters down. Even Duchess Satine picks them up at times, but the cost is big. Yeah, and if you got a wife and a kid and everything, and it makes me think of what Saw does in the book Rebel Rising. If y'all haven't read that, God, we can't recommend that one enough. It's so good, and how the danger and the threat, and you see it a little bit with Anton Lesser's ISB character there at the end, like the retaliation's coming. And when someone like Saw, Gerrera, or others fight outside the boundaries of certain rebel morals, it brings even more pain back. The chaos of violence begins, but that might be the cost, but you have to wait. I just loved it. I loved that Vel moment. It was small but important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Vel, tempted to stay on the mission, makes the choice to try to save Nemec, So
yeah,
there's definitely a morality there that would not happen with the Empire.
Totally.
I have one other big theme, but I think I'm very curious to see where you were going next.
Honestly, it was kind of all there. I did put some stuff. I guess it's the theme of how oppression happens. Can we say that? And what's at stake?
I think we're in the same place. We've been having this a lot where we are really interested in the same idea and we phrase the top line of it slightly differently. Yeah,
absolutely. It's kind of funny. Yeah, I put the Empire's relation to the Eldani and calling him what they call him Dolnies all the way through it, right?
Donnie. The Donnie.
Which I guess you could interpret. I was going to ask you what you thought of that. I interpret a little bit of that's the Empire's version of what they call him. A little derogatory, possibly, but also I thought maybe they were referred to by even Gorn in that way as well. So I don't know. Maybe
I just took it as like the planet is Eldani and the people are Donnie, the same way the planet is name checked in this episode is Deveron and the people there are Deveronians,
Correct. Okay, great. But even from there, it's just this, how to tear down cultures, worlds, and planets, and to have the Commandant essentially give his own manifesto and pamphlet on how to do it. And it's a very real world. It's drawn from, I think, many different parts of histories here on Earth and all those things that play there. And it was very effective in the way of it's scary in that line. They'd rather suffer than accept, and how that, from a certain point of view, how that line has different meanings. Can be a rallying cry or for the Empire victory.
Yeah, no, you're saying a lot of things I love. I think that one of the core, to me, themes of Star Wars that I talk about a lot, because it really resonates with me, is the idea of the flowing and the organic versus the rigid and the mechanical, choice versus control. And this is so explicitly what's going on, right? We're really diving deep on a live action television show that lots of people are going to see about the Empire sort of imposing this rigid mechanical control on a place that is more organic, more connected to each other, more connected to the galaxy. I really like, it was probably in previous episodes, but it was so clear to me that in the Imperial base, they have that viewing post that's built on 3 spires, and it's kind of a rigid mechanical version of the Donnie's stone temple with natural curves, but still the 3 spires. So you just get it visually. We get all of Commandant J-Hold's disgust and dismissal of ceremony and of their culture. It's taking little things that have been in Star Wars since the beginning, like the Imperial saying to Chewbacca in the first film, where you taking this thing, to Piet saying bounty hunters, we don't need their scum. That's always been a part of the Imperials, but to really dive into it here, in contrast, that utter disrespect and dismissal of the ancient and the cosmic, and contrasting that with the Donnie's reverence at the natural beauty of the eye and its meaning to them, that it's a window to the rest of the galaxy. It's such a clear, powerful contrast, and it's powerful because it's some things that the Empire can't control.
And it all leads to Bright Tree Village, I'll say. It really does. The things there, there's a line of the Commandant about being above the stench, right? And they keep that they smell or whatever, and that kind of stuff there, which is kind of on the surface. But even then, I even put we're talking about conviction, commitment, and how to build the rebellion, but a big why. I put down this idea of you're fighting for the beauty in the galaxy, because the Empire is trying to take even that. They're going to keep them out of the sacred place. Well, they can come back and build things for us, of course. But we've been promoting Imperial viewing parties down below, and they keep wrestling with these choices and not realizing we're taking the freedoms. But all that saying, we're here to take away this very beauty in the galaxy. We're here to take it away from you. And that's another reason to fight, and another tool at the Empire's disposal.
Yeah, and there's even that implication in that line that starting the Imperial viewing party down below where they want them, this kind of forced migration, that will be more profitable because the Empire can sell them stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty brutal. I think a lot of the Donnie and the Empire relationship is set up in that conversation at the beginning with Cassian and Nemec as well. And the other big theme that I thought was really present in this episode is really defining the difference in the ideologies. So really getting away from any sort of surface level good guys and bad guys, right?
Yeah.
Getting down to not saying it's not good guys and bad guys. It's gray. They're both the same. It's not saying that at all. It's saying let's show deeply the difference in ideology so we can see why people choose to fight or people fall to the dark side of following the Imperial ideology. And to me, it was really framed of control versus choice and this really practical definition throughout the episode that freedom is the ability to choose things for yourself or the society coming together to make a choice for the society versus an authoritarian or tyrannical force limiting or entirely taking away your choices. And I thought that was really great because, in storytelling and certainly in our real life American culture, a word like freedom can get thrown around so much that it begins to lose any value. And it almost just sounds like this is just what you shout at somebody when you want them to do what you want them to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So diving in and going, what does freedom mean? Why is it worth fighting for? And that's a part of Nemec and Cassian's conversation where Nemec gets a little frustrated with Cassian, right? And thinks that Cassian doesn't care about the big picture. And says, freedom, independence, justice, really kind of using those words of what are we fighting for? And he has that great interaction where Cassian does indeed prove to him that he's quite passionate about those ideas, but is only willing to go so far. So I feel like that idea was framed right away for me of like, okay, Nemec's manifesto is about freedom. So what does that literally mean? And then we follow up very quickly with Commandant J-Hold's speech about giving the Donnie the illusion that they have choice.
Yeah.
That specific quote is, we found the best way to steer them as we'd like is to offer alternatives. You put a number of options on the table, and they're so wrapped up in choosing, they fail to notice you've given them nothing they wanted at the start. So that is just like a precise example of tyranny giving you the illusion of choice while also just taking it away entirely. And I think that's something that certainly happens in authoritarian governments, but it happens, I think, sometimes with even like out of control corporations. Like my dad was telling me last night, he's trying to get new internet, and he tried to call up a company and say, I'd just like internet. And I think the employees must have been like on a corporately dictated script, but they would only offer him bundles, internet and cable, or internet and cell phone, or internet and landline. And my dad's, a little bit older, and he's just like, listen, buddy,
hey,
I'm trying to tell you a thing, and my dad and I had this kind of fun conversation, eye rolling of what you're going to do about it. And then I watched this episode of Andor, and it's like, yes, it's the illusion of choice of the internet company that is one of your very few options. You don't have a plethora of options. If you want to be connected to the larger world, you got to have one of these. And we want to say the customer is always right. Look at all these choices we give you. It's 3 and you can take them, and you can't have this other one.
Yeah. 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 It's all part of this modern era of Star Wars, really diving into how that safe and secure society Palpatine brought on in really worked and really oppressed and really broke down. And this is, obviously see it in Rogue One, but I really think it's on display so much in Solo, and now to see it actually have an Imperial just being like, here's what we do. Here's what we do.
Yeah. This is how we take their power away. This is how we take their choice and their individuality and their society away, is by pretending to be friends while limiting them as much as is possible. And then the colonel there, Pedigar, asks, will the Donnies let us build our new facility in peace? And Gorn's got that great response of, I don't see them having a choice,
Right.
which again really raised that specific idea that this is what is at stake. This is why we are fighting to have choice. And I feel like that has that great double meaning of Gorn basically saying to the Colonel, like, the Empire has successfully given them absolutely no choice, or rather a binary choice. They'll have to accept the facility in peace, or they'll have to choose rebellion, because you're not going to sit down at the table and have a good faith, discussion or negotiation with them. So I love the loaded double meaning of they're to Pedagar, Gorn's, I don't see them having a choice means the Empire has succeeded. But I think in Gorn's heart, it means you have given them no choice but to rebel against you. And no, they're not going to let you build your facility in peace, because you've given them no choice but to rebel.
Yep. This is why I'm pushing for the survival of Gorn and the Gorn cell of the rebellion, led by Donnies. I love this.
The Gorn cell. Yeah. So, like, once I was really looking at everything from that lens, it kind of dovetailed with this idea of the cost of the rebellion and the morality of the rebellion, that the rebel cell, who are taking on this Imperial group and raiding, are explicitly taking the choices away from people, right? Because that they have to in order to rebel, right? They're taking choice away from Bihas and his family, right? Vel screams at him, "One path, one choice, we win, or everyone dies." And J-Hold is shocked that when he sees that Gorn is exercising choice, because he's not supposed to be, doing that. So I thought that really was great to kind of define freedom as the ability to make choices, have Nemik worry about how much do we have to be like them to fight them, and then literally see them have to take a family hostage, have to take people's choices away and say, do what we say or die.
Yeah, and then chaos explodes, and then the cost is paid. All leading to the Luthen laugh.
All leading to the Luthen laugh. Yeah, and I'm not saying this in any sort of, it's gray. They're good and bad. The ideology of I think it lays out that the ideology of the rebellion is freedom, independent, justice. If we have a disagreement, let's talk and leave one another as many options and choices as possible, versus the Empire's cruelty and xenophobia and desire to control everything. And then I think where the humanity in the gray area comes in is a lot of people are caught up in the machinery of the Imperial, even some of the actual humans caught up in the horror of the Imperial ideology.
Yeah, no, in terms of the gray area thing, that's one of those terms. You talk about freedom, a term being tossed around a lot. That gray area thing's tossed a lot around in fandoms. And Skeen is in a gray area, and look where he is. The show comments on the end result. You do choose, and you have to figure it out. And in some way you're making that choice whether you want to or not. And if you stay in the gray area, I think that's where you lose a little too. I think that's a lot of what Skeen's about to me.
That makes a ton of sense. Tying into all that. Any other big picture thoughts on the themes and the ideas of this episode, this arc?
Nothing there other than I just really love this episode for just presenting things again so plainly and in a way that maybe others haven't seen or been able to connect with before in Star Wars. And I loved it. And it's all wrapped up. All these themes, we love diving deep, but they're all wrapped up in a good old-fashioned heist, which made it a lot of fun.
And screaming, terrifying TIE fighters, which we will talk about more. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back to talk about some of the action scenes, the whimsy. Whimsy feels weird for this episode, but I did laugh a few times. We'll discover what some of those moments were in a moment. We will be back. We are back to continue our discussion of Episode 6 of Andor, The Eye. We always like to talk about big canon surprises, fun connections. Sometimes you walk into Luthen's shop and there's so much to discuss, and other times, not as much. Ken, I thought that there were definitely like a few little references and nods and all that, and I'm sure there's some I missed. But I felt like this episode was more about emotional canon connections than any literal, like they mentioned that character or that planet. How did you feel about that?
100%. We keep making connections to Return of the Jedi and Ewoks because it's there. We keep making connections to Solo because it's there. It's there in the faces and the eyes of the Cloud Riders. That's the connections that I love, and I enjoy the other ones, but those are the ones I'm here for a little bit more. But there were some definitely, some little things along the way. Mostly Mothma talking about the Gormans, I think, but yeah.
Yeah, which was absolutely great. In fact, we don't need to go in chronological order. We can just jump to that. I think a huge canon thing for me was seeing the Senate again, bringing together the scenes from the prequels that at the time of their release were derided as being boring. Who cares about politics? And now we're coming around to this much more political show in Andor. We're getting to see the Senate in live action again, but it's a really different Senate. Like, I know we had narratively what was going on was while Mothma was making her speech, the news of the Aldhani raid was breaking. But even before that news is breaking, that was a sad, empty, perfunctory, unengaged space. Even in the prequels, when the Republic is already starting to falter, right? It's a vibrant place where it's full of different people really arguing their position. All through the Clone Wars, we see that in the animated show. I thought it was such a great choice to just look at the number of people who just didn't show up because why? That sad, empty Senate just hit me like a ton of bricks. How did you feel about that?
I love that you pointed out. I was going to say I love it, but I don't love it. It's like you're watching C-SPAN late at night, and someone's some senators putting a bill out there, and there's like 12 other senators, and it's like no one showed it, no one cares. And it was telling. One of them, she's speaking to just a silent chamber. I think even without that Aldhani announcement, no one's responding.
Yeah, it's not already empty because of the news, because the news is breaking in the middle of her speech, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was great. Are people looking at the schedule and like, oh, Mothma's speaking?
Yes.
She's not going to win, and she's going to make another one of these impassioned speeches. Like, there's no point,
Yeah, well, here she goes again, caring about the others.
Yeah, or is it even like we know we want power, so we want to suck up to Palpatine, to Masamidas, to Slide more, and they like it when nobody shows up for Mothma's speeches. So I'm not gonna. I mean, because that's sometimes what happens when you're talking about that late night C-SPAN. Sometimes it's like, is a political thing. I'm going to show that I don't care about this argument, or it's wrong, by not even attending, by not even engaging with it.
Yep. Indeed.
And then, there is that, there's no way to magnify enough, but there is a possible Palpatine speck in the background, right?
I was going to ask you, were you expecting just to be a quick cut to old Palpy sitting there falling asleep or paying attention to other things, or even getting the message? I was like, oh, maybe is he going to hear, or is Masamita going to see it?
I was so curious to see if they would cut to him, And obviously I love the character, love Ian McDermott, but it's also, it's the storytelling of it. It's the, does he even bother presiding, right?
No.
Or only for specific moments where he wants to make a speech. We know from Rebels and lots of other storytelling that to the rest of the galaxy, he now projects an image where he is where he's recovered from his scars from the Jedi Rebellion. But how does he present himself in the actual Senate? A lot of storytelling reasons that I want to see him. It's not just I love the character and I want to see him because cool cameo. It's I want to know the story.
Totally. Yeah. But even if it was a cut to Sly Moore, we're all rooting to see Sly Moore. Just Sly Moore getting the iPad notification would have been good. But I like how it played out, and I like the way it was played by Genevieve O'Reilly in that scene.
Yeah, and I think it's great that this Gorman thread is developing. Many other people have talked about that. Is the horrible tragedy on Gorman to the Gorman people is a motivating factor for Mothma in Rebels. So I like that it's building this thread that makes it personal. That this is a thing that is too blatant, too far.
Yeah.
For the way the Empire is trampling on this, allies' rights.
Yeah, well, her even using, putting the boot down, using that phrasing.
It's powerful. Another bit of emotional canon that I wanted to talk about is just this idea of a mercenary's place in the rebellion. That Nemec is wrestling with that. I love that he titled it "The Role of Mercenaries in the Galactic Struggle of Freedom," and then we get to see in Skeen what the morality that Nemec was wrestling with in his essay, right? And all of that is really great in this episode. If Andor was the first Star Wars anything, it would be fascinating. But the actual first Star Wars thing, the movie Star Wars, is that's the subplot. What is Han Solo's role in the rebellion? What does somebody who claims to be only out for themselves care about this galactic struggle for freedom? So I just kind of kept thinking about Han Solo and like what would have Nemec thought if he'd lived to see Han Solo and Lando become heroes of the rebellion, No,
I think it's a great way that this episode being bookended by the mercenary talk and the mercenary's role. And again, I think at some point, all that gray has to fade away and you either are on the light or the dark. You do have to make a choice. And even though, the old thing of non-action is a choice, I think it's fascinating. Yeah. So the connection to, that's just all part of the Star Wars lore. And it's, again, going to Solo, right? It's played for Cloud Riders. They're mercenaries. They're pirates, but they're not. They're not. And they have a big part in this rebellion too. So Nemec has a lot to say. Again, we really truly love to hear what this character has to say on it.
Yeah, I also thought it's really great to look at the movie Solo because it is dealing with a generally similar time frame, not exactly, but this era where choices have been utterly restricted by the Empire. And is personal freedom even a possibility? Han thinks he can get it, and everybody's like, yeah, no, you can't, kid.
Right. Yeah.
And that is kind of what's at stake. And Han spends that movie and a large chunk of his life claiming that he just looks out for number one. He is claiming to be what Skeen actually is.
Right.
And the story of Han is the heart of gold that lives, in this alleged mercenary's body.
Yeah. Again, what is the good in you? And once you find it, do you run towards it, run away from it? Or like Han, do both at certain times in your life?
Yeah. Kind of grumpily go, I'll do it for now. Okay. And he just goes to Kira saying, you're the good guy,
Yeah.
Great
truly.
stuff. Only one or two other canon things that I noticed. I do really like that the Aldani Rebels crew, their jumpers are a different color, but they do look a lot like Luke's Bespin fatigues, and that made me happy.
There you go. I had to pick that up. That's awesome.
Yeah. And then Luthen's office, his back office there, it has been confirmed on old StarWars.com under the episode gallery in the trivia section that those are jumbo Jedi and Sith holocrons that he has in the background there.
Yeah.
And I don't think you and I have discussed that. So I'm curious how you feel about Luthen in what appears to be a pretty nice part of Coruscant, downtown Coruscant, in the back office, sure, not on display in the window, but just jumbo Jedi and Sith holocrons in this era. Do you bump against that? Do you have headcanon for that? Why do you think Luthen has those when he is trying to stay under the radar?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. I have thoughts on this. I'm glad you mentioned this because I don't think I've really super detail been paying attention to anything going on in Luthen's shop. I wait for a good video from Alex or I wait for an episode guide. As an Indiana Jones fan, I'm glad to see Indiana Jones represented in several spots in Luthen's workshop. But the holocrons, it's hard to miss them this time around. And I know some folks have got the idea of, maybe there's some force sensitivity going on in Luthen or even Clea, like maybe. I don't necessarily think so. But to have those, number one, I'm like, what's the information on there? So are you trying to get something from it? Or are you trying to keep that from someone else? Or is it just wasted information? This is an era in which, as Nemec says, they've done such a good job. The Empire's done such a great job at just making us forget so many things. Well, we know more than anything, that's the Jedi. Or at least what the Jedi's role really was or who they really were as an order. That's all been muddled and erased by the Empire. So you're holding on to those things. I'm not accusing Luthen of holding on to them, hoarding them. to me, more than anything in that, there's a lot of purpose in everything in that shop, or most of the things we pointed out. That's a Gungan weapon. There are people who their species that were part of an uprising, all that kind of stuff. The reference to the Old Republic uprising. That one, I'm wondering, is that part of just keeping the flame? Is there something on there? I don't think a Jedi is going to show up. I don't think there's going to be lightsabers in this series. So I'm not butting up against it, but I'm thinking about it more than I did the previous 5 episodes.
Yeah. I think the thing for me is, like, obviously he is old enough to know what the Jedi were. He might have opinions about them, right? But he knows they were real. Maybe he thinks they were failures, and monks who sat in their ivory tower discussing when they should have actually been using their power to help. Who knows? I'm guessing what Luthen's grumpy about. But he has to know that a Jedi artifact is to be destroyed.
Yeah.
I guess not has to. I think that's what I'm most interested by. Like, I don't think he has any access to or I don't think he's saving that information. I don't think he's like, I've got a heist and it's based on this Sith holocron.
Right.
I don't think he can open them. So does he maybe not understand, like, how fully they might bring the attention of Palpatine down? That's the interesting question to me.
Yeah. And again, he might just have them, right?
They're artifacts, right?
They're artifacts, but those are big, and they're literally big. I'm not expecting them to be dealt with in this show. I'm just in terms of the character of Luthen, who's fascinating. You talk about, I want a novel about the life of Luthen up to this point. I absolutely do, and when you acquire those, by whatever means, you got to be aware of it to a certain degree.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe there is something in him who he does have a sort of perverse interest in. I am hoarding these things to present them as, interesting artifacts for, your husband's name day or whatever. But in his mind, there's like, this is a museum of atrocities.
Yes.
In reality, is what he is collecting and what he sees. And so I wonder if for him, the Jedi and the Sith holocrons are a part of his museum of atrocities.
Right. I agree with that.
I thought that was highlighted too. I really liked that moment. It could have just been some passing dialogue, but when he is showing that woman in the shop a necklace and says it's got writing that's a dead Devron language, and she says, "How sad," and he says, "No, it's liberating. You decide what it says, your own secret language." It feels like when he's in Luthen working at the gallery mode, he always says the thing that is most disgusting to him in reality.
Right. Oh, yeah. I like that.
Yeah. This is a fascinating line. That was it for me.
So,
go ahead.
No, because I thought about that line a lot. It's so from that point of view, it's almost like he's be disgusted by the history is written by the victors kind of idea. It's a culture erased. Well, look, you get to decide now. you erased it.
And it really ties back to what the empires are doing to the Dani people, and the definition that the reason we are fighting this is because choice is being taken away and reserved only for the powerful and the tyrannical, and other people are not being allowed choice. So for him to go, it's liberating. You who are just buying this in a shop have no connection to the culture, might be a part of a society that's complicit in the destruction of this culture. You have all the control and power now. It's a trinket to you, and you get to have your own fun secret language. You decide. It was really on point to the themes.
Hang it on your rearview mirror in your car.
Powerful. Was there any other canon connections for you?
So a lot made with the TIE fighters. It's not a canon connection, but it's like I've seen TIE fighters before. I get it. But going inside the cockpit, it was interesting. It was a little different. It was the cockpits were a little roomier. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I thought it was just a different kind of canon connection of, maybe these are the roomier editions. But anyways, I'm getting sidetracked by something small. I did like seeing the TIE fighters in action and just how it works.
Yeah, no, and I really, really did like that. There was that very familiar of the Imperial Klaxons, the TIE fighters themselves, and their blasters blazing. It was familiar but different, which I think is a great segue into action moments.
Yes.
So we did have a little bit more action than just Cyril throwing down his cereal.
Yeah.
That we had last week. So let's talk about some favorite action moments in this. Did you have favorite action moments, or were you more caught up in the less that was cool and more horrible chaos and violence?
It was more horrible chaos and violence. To be honest, really, truly was. It wasn't like it was a great blaster fight. I think it was well done. Yeah, I think I was focused on that side of it. Little moments all the way through. I'll start with a big one, and I'm sure you probably have something with it too. But Nemec, he doesn't go the way of Corporal Upham in Saving Private Ryan, which is the way you might have played that kind of character that might be viewed softer in some way, physically or otherwise. And it's not that. It's not played that way at all with Nemec, and I kind of like that. I didn't expect that soldier to kill Cassian in that moment, but to have Nemec do it, I actually really liked it. It was a moment of action, a hero moment for Nemec, and well deserved.
Yeah, I thought it was a hero moment for Nemec. I think that Nemec was coded throughout the show as the nerd who writes manifestos and builds super accurate models. So the idea that all of that training that he did paid off, that he made that precise shot, that could have easily taken Cassian's head off. There was some resonance there. And I think in an episode that really discussed, are mercenaries selfish? Is Cassian selfish? That Nemec was clearly somebody who again and again was contributing to a view of we are stronger together. Only Cassian can find the ship, but only Nemec can navigate them out. All these kinds of moments with Nemec were powerful, and that was one of my favorite action moments too, because I almost expected more for him to, shoot part of Cassian's ear off, rather than nail that shot, which was great.
No, really, really loved it.
I loved just visually Vel and Cinta jumping over the bridge. I felt like this episode had a lot of setting up Cinta as being somebody who is very committed and very forward moving and not questioning things. And it was great after Vel had her moment of hesitation to see them both just throw themselves over the bridge. Having watched the previous episode so close to this one, that description of Cinta by Skeen rings true. Kind of harder than all of us here. I forget his exact quote. Not that she doesn't have emotions or feelings or isn't feeling the cost. She hasn't. It's a character that's probably said the least, but her actions really powerful there, and it also had some good GoldenEye vibes. So, absolutely, a little bit of space bungee jumping was great. This was one of the classic, just like that. That's cool. The action, I think, is meant to be thrilling, high stakes, but it is so much about what's going on and the horror of it. But I did really like when Vel shot the machine and blasted some steam into the Imperial's face. That was just a great old video game James Bond move, right?
Again,
pipes they can shoot to blast steam in the baddie's face.
This is a heist picture. This is what I wanted, and we did get it. Even though it hit a lot different than I would have thought a year ago when I was waiting for the series.
Yeah. Then just two more for me. The TIE Fighter's flight, I think just kind of everything about it, the how much they were built up to be so ominous of, oh no, 3 TIE Fighters are coming. I think there's two things. I think the pilots were shot in the cockpit differently, and we're spending all of this time where every Imperial seems real. Even J-Hold, who is awful to his family, but his family's there. They're trapped in this machinery. There's that one background person when I think it's Kimsey realizes that something's up and says, we got to go to the vault. And somebody's in the background is like, but we'll miss the eye. Because we're spending so much time with everybody, even if they are vile, they're still human. They're still real. So there's something about just the little slight different framing of the TIE Fighters that made them feel like there's a person with a name under that helmet.
No, that's a great way to describe it, because we have to acknowledge they look a little different than what they classically look like in the past. That's a great sentence, Ken. But I think it was effective in that way too, because I had that thought of, wow, that's really what they look like. the big bulky helmets and the tiny little frames. They're just folks. They're just folks flying. And the TIE fighter helmets have always been a little large. Think of the two leaving with Vader in New Hope, where he's like, all right, you two come with me. It's a little clunky. And this, in keeping with the show, was played more real than other Star Wars things. It was fascinating.
Yeah, no, I thought it was absolutely great in terms of making you feel the stakes and that whole flight out with the climb and the crystals and the breaking glass and in the way they built up that ship was slower. It really made the TIE fighters just lances of deadly green energy feel really real and really visceral as well.
Yeah, they were escaping in a Volkswagen van, and that doesn't go well all the time. So.
Yeah, and for me, final action shot is that Cassian's shot to Skeen was both surprising and predictable, and I loved the speed of it, and I loved the mid sentence of it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, both times you've seen Cassian kind of do this in this series. There's this little flash of emotion and anger, and little loss of control from Cassian that I like that he might need to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. So any other favorite action moments for you?
No, just a lot of little ones on the way, but yeah, no, I think you covered them all there.
Okay, so let's talk about moments of comedy and whimsy.
Just so many throughout this episode.
Yeah. So did you have any? And if so, what are they?
Just the Commandant's wife, man. Perhaps you've expanded, and I'd like to see that. I mean, again, like you said, built out a lot of pain. Even going back to last week, some of the funnier moments were with Karn, a character I'm not necessarily rooting for, but just the conversation with his mom is priceless stuff. So a lot of comedy in that scene. Unfortunately, I wish they had a better life.
Yeah, no, and I think is a great short scene to make to have empathy for the wife and the child caught up in this, right? The child who's not feeling well, or maybe just saying that because he doesn't want to spend time with his dad, being made to wear the Imperial shirt.
Right.
J-Hold blaming everything on everybody else. Like it's it's not his fault that his body has maybe changed in any way. It's that his wife didn't store his belt right. That just like nothing's ever my fault. It made me laugh because it was that level of needing to control things beyond what they can be controlled that it tipped into comedy for me is a little bit earlier when J-Hold is being really hard on Gorn about making sure that everything's under control. And he says, I need it perfect. And Gorn says, like, yep, I'm doing everything. He just yells, perfect. And just, to me, there's a level of like satire to it. Like, of course, we all want to be in control, but there's a certain point where you have to accept you can't control everything. Like that cosmic event that's about to happen. You can't control that.
Yeah, that's so true. I love it.
What are some other moments for you, or was that it?
That was it. I mean, the Luthen stuff
from Robota.
Yeah, Luthen at the end, but I wasn't not a lot of laughter in this episode.
Yeah, for me, it's a little bit more like sparks of personality in life. I did like Nemec's, kind of breaking cover to smile excitedly at Cassian and say, "You were right. I'm not tired at all."
Yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of little character, warm character moments, which is great.
Yeah. So for me, just a couple other little character moments. When they first burst out with their blasters and Commandant J-Hold says, "What's all this?" That almost felt like, a British man with a monocle being shocked in the monocle swings. Like, what? What's this be happening to me? And I really enjoyed Gorn saying to J-Hold, quit gawking and get pushing.
Yes.
Is it worth it to spend the time with J-Hold to see how much he's like, I control everything, everywhere, except for this one guy who might be able to get me off this planet. And then I have to control how we kiss his ass. But Gorn is so knowingly stripping power and choice away from J-Hold by saying, quit gawking and get pushing. Final thing for me, we got to talk about Dr. Quadpaw.
Yeah, that's true.
I really do. I know people have different tastes, and I get that, and I'm fine with Star Wars having some dishes on the Star Wars buffet like Andor that are a little grittier. There aren't going to be as many silly moments, but I still want it to be the same galaxy. So every once in a while, I want somebody just sort of weird and fantastic like Dr. Quadpaw to show up. And I also kind of like the commitment that, okay, great. It's an alien design. It's a little weird. It's a little bonkers. But then you get to the credits and you realize his name is Dr. Quadpaw, right? Which is a Lucas level thumbing his nose at fans who want things too serious, going, I don't care. His name's Savage Opress. Yeah, that guy's named Warren Freitag. That's the way my daughter used to say corn fritters. Too bad. It's a part of Star Wars is silly, right?
Yeah.
Just in the credits going like, don't worry. That is a part of the core of this galaxy as well, you know?
Yeah, no, it's effective. Similar to, what was the character we all love, Vetch from the first couple episodes?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's effective, but it's not unlike Rogue One, where you and I just recently celebrated Borg Gullet on Databank Dive, where it is a very serious, grounded, troops on the ground. Oh, but there's also this mind-reading blob. And it had the same effect, like I said up top, where like I was so pulled in by the reality of that this world was presenting that I'm like, whoa. Oh, that's right. This is Star Wars. And I'm with you. I'm with you on that. I am here to make, alongside you, the case for Pulp.
Yeah, and I don't need it to be wall to wall, but I like it being present in the corners so it feels like the same galaxy.
Yeah, this is Claude exists in this galaxy. It's all one. It's all one.
Yeah, and I like Dr. Quadpaw raising all four hands. It made me laugh a little bit in the midst of a really hard and sad scene.
Yeah. No. The voice choice. I love that too.
Yeah. So as we begin to wrap up here, did you have a favorite Luthen line or noise? We didn't have as many to choose from this episode.
The 3 beats here. I love when you got the guy in the shop just like, do you have anything from Eldani? And the guard falls down a little bit for Luthen. And he stays within character. But I love that because it's, I didn't know which way that was going to go, right? It's a good thing or a bad thing that he's mentioning it. And Luthen plays it as such. So there's that. How to laugh. I call it the exhale of rebellion.
Yeah, I like the husband in the shop saying, really? I was kidding. When
I
might have something in the back. The laugh and the hair stroke was so great. That sort of just laugh of like, it's real. It's happening. I've made this happen. I've made them stand up and notice. I've hurt them. And that hair stroke, like for a second there was like, is he just gonna whip the wig off and let real Luthen out?
Yes, I thought that too. Yeah.
Any other Luthen moments for you?
No, it's just a great laugh. But I said it's up there with you got the sigh of Akbar, kind of the cost of the Battle of Endor and the rebellion overall, the stress of it. You got some stuff with Radis we talked about too. But I just like he's kind of has that. The rebellion has begun. I like that.
Yeah. Absolutely. That was great. Thrilling Luthen stuff. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you wanted to?
No, I think the big thing about this episode is so well done. It's being praised by a lot of folks I know. It's also still not for everyone, and that is okay. But I love what was presented here. And again, Andor keeps hitting themes we're so familiar with, but themes we need to hear. And if we need to approach it from a different angle, a little more grounded, whatever word you want to use to describe it, I'm really here for that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Only other thing for me is I really enjoy the music, the theme at the beginning changing slightly. And I thought this episode was a little tricksy because it was somber but hopeful. And I felt as I watched the music going like, is the heist going to work out better than I think it is? Because the music is making me feel like it is.
Right.
And I'm sure other people might read it differently, but that's the way it hit me. So I got suckered by skiing, and I got suckered by the opening theme music in a great way.
I love that. No, yeah, the music was great. There was a lot of talk about the Star Wars vocabulary and changing things around, and it's different. It's not your traditional Star Wars music, and that is okay. It was really effective. It's heist spy thriller music this time out, and it worked for me too.
Yeah, great stuff. Any predictions or hopes for the next episode or the next arc?
All right, like the Empire. Yeah, I'm just going. The Empire gets pissed, man, and the fight has to get bigger for the rebellion. Then we know it's not a totally unified coalition yet. We know that doesn't happen for a while. We know Scarif is the first big military assault. We know what's coming. But the fact that line, that haunting line that Andor has, like, be careful what you wish for. And yes, there's some things maybe we've seen or can get that's happening. But again, you have the ISB, everyone gather. We're not leaving here tonight until all your plans of retaliation are in a nice presentation form so we can choose how to strike back.
Yeah, I mean, it was almost like compile your Empire Strikes Back files.
Yes, there was. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was powerful. I think a couple things for me is I do hope that Cassian goes back to Ferrix, because I think he does care, and he maybe if he realizes, things are worse than I thought, I need to use this money to get Marva out. And a part of me as a fan is to misquote Darth Vader, where is B2 Emo? Is he safe? Is he all right? I want to know. I also I love that laugh of Luthen's. It ends with a sigh, so a little bit of the weight of it is coming in. But I'm so curious. I think he cares about Vel's life. I think he has a connection to Vel.
Yeah.
But I'm so curious if he's hardened. Does he care that other people died, or is he like that was likely? But you made it out, and the mission was a success. Does he care that Andor didn't commit more, or is he like, fine, I used him for this mission and he delivered? How much Luthen cares and who he cares about, I'm really excited to learn more about.
Yeah, and the how of that, and yeah, absolutely, because I believe he does. But what does he do with it? And it is, is he a hey, he's dead, leave him there kind of guy, or and what's got him to that point? And just the fact that with the fight, with the Empire striking back on any level, and when I say the fight has to get bigger, this means it has to start moving up the ivory towers a little bit more. And I think with Mothman out there and everything, I'm excited to see that play out.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the final thing for me is I felt like this arc did resolve the mission, but it also really left this huge to be continued with Cinta, right?
Yeah.
They spent some time positioning her as strong, unyielding, focused. She's the one who, without any hesitation, takes out the colonel who was holding the blaster on Nemik, described by Skeen as the toughest, all that stuff, and then is left behind for a reason, right? To do something. But what? I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. Yes. In full uniform, and just is it a slow? That's how her escape plan is supposed to be, or something else? We'll see. Fascinating. Want more with the character.
Yeah, is she there to further liberate the Donnie? Yeah, or is it just an escape plan? Yeah, very excited for that.
Yeah.
All right, as we wrap up, we always like to talk about what fun merch we would want based on this episode. Ken and I are unified in our demand to be able to purchase Nemik's Manifesto at Galaxy's Edge.
Yeah.
What else you got, Ken?
Now I still want to go get some crunchies, as we know they're now called, for Karn's cereal, which is also what most of us call our dog's food. So that's interesting. Trying to think what else I would want from this episode. Is there a way to get like the eye as like a art piece to hang?
I was thinking like a black light poster of the eye. Would
great call.
Amazing.
Yeah. Like some of your friends as kids put stars on their ceilings in their rooms. Yeah.
Yep. You turn out the light and you realize, oh wow, the eye is happening. That would be great.
I love that.
And then this is not shocking. I need a Dr. Quad Paw action figure. That will be an immediate purchase from me.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic kind of later Kenner run. That's absolutely got to happen.
Yeah. It'll be a while. I'll have to wait until probably about 2025. But I believe that Dr. Quad Paw will be my little plastic friend at some point. Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts before we close up, Ken?
No, what a fun episode. I said fun. A tense episode, but fun to watch. Star Wars fan. I love celebrating it all. And let's get going. Every episode ends with me going, I've been a big proponent for week by week releases for all shows. This is the first time in my life I've been like, let's binge this.
Let's go. Yeah, there's something about it that's very, you really want to know what choice they make next, and I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
But for now, do you want to let people know where they can find us?
Absolutely. We are the Force Center Podcast feed, and we can be found on Twitter at Force Center Pod. We're on Instagram, YouTube as well. Check out our YouTube channel for live Q&As. You can either be a part of them or go back and watch some of the old episodes. More things on the way there. You can find us on Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and more. Just search, you'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/Force Center, and you can support us directly at patreon.com/Force Center. You can follow me at Napzok, or go to my website, napzok.com. Get ticket information for upcoming comedy shows like this weekend in La Jolla, California, or at the end of the month in Seattle. Joseph, where can they find and follow and get all the information on you?
Yeah, you can find me on all the social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is at Joseph Scrimshaw, and you can check out my website, josephscrimshaw.com, for links to other things, or you can go to YouTube, search for Joseph Scrimshaw, like and subscribe as I put more things on that channel. That would be great if you are interested, if you want to make that choice. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for Luthen's Jumbo Holocrons, this has been the Andor Report.